hello, everybody. I know this is your last session of 2 days, but I tell you something, this is the one to have waited for. It's going to be fantastic. It's camera work, the craft of camera work. I'm going to quickly tell you that when I was at first starting in TV, I worked on regional news, and the very, very first thing I directed were a few shots. I had to go out with a crew to do a few shots of Liverpool Airport, and the crew collected me in the van, and they said, now, you're the director, and you need to wear this. And they gave me a high-vis jacket. I felt pretty pleased with myself, I can tell you. And then when we got to the shoot, they gave me a little hat, and they said, you wear this little hat. And I went, okay, great, little hat. And it was only when they gave me a stick, like a sort of wand, and said, yeah, the director carries this, that I realised they were taking the piss out of me. And from that moment on, I knew that the crew are always cleverer than the director. So we have two unbelievably talented people here. I'm going to introduce them both. Sara Deane has shot 14 features, numerous shorts, commercials and documentaries since she graduated 10 years ago. She specialises in drama and has a love of sci-fi. One of her most recent films, Anna and the Apocalypse, won several awards at festivals and was nominated for a Scottish BAFTA Audience Award. Sara.
Hi.
Mike Robinson is an Emmy-winning documentary DOP, director of photography, who's worked with some of the country's best directors and with some of the nation's best-known personalities, most recently David Attenborough and the Queen in The Queen's Green Planet. I have to say that when this session is over, you must go and look through these guys' websites, because there are so many amazing things which we're not going to be able to cover today. But I'm going to start them off by asking the question that we all need to know. Where did your careers, your stellar careers, begin? Mike, do you want to?
I guess I'm self-taught, in fact. I have had no training in terms of camera work.
Don't tell these guys that, they're busy training away.
I went to art school, to St Martin's in the early 80s. And there I was exposed to painting and films and photography. And that launched me in with an interest in the visual world, really. And I sort of blagged my way in as a camera assistant. And then, of course, that was in the days of 16mm film. There's no video then, so you had to sort of learn, and I learned on the job. I learned by making some mistakes, by loading magazines, and getting to know people. But it was... And
by watching stuff, did you always love...
Yeah, I watched films. Then it was, I suppose, the French New Wave and early German cinema.
Yeah.
I watched that sort of thing, and that really inspired me. I didn't really watch a huge amount of documentary. It was more...
High art.
Yeah, it was more telling stories with pictures, which is, we all do that, but it was, cinema was what interested me particularly.
Sara, where were your beginnings?
I was very lucky that there was this thing called Children's Film Unit,
right,
which had 16mm cameras and stuff like that, and they made like a feature film every summer and short films in the year, and they were using my school as a location, and I ended up actually auditioning for a part in this film. Getting in the film was terrible, but I saw these people around the camera and I was like, oh my God, that is amazing. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I joined the Children's Film Unit, which was like a Saturday school type of thing. And then I went to Bournemouth Film School, and then I was a clapper loader for like 5 years. And then whilst I was a clapper loader, I was still shooting like shorts and stuff like that, because I knew I wanted to be a director of photography. And so then I applied to the RTS and studied there, and then graduated from there like 10 years ago.
And can I ask you something about film school? Because I didn't go to film school, and I've always been very sad about it. And I guess quite a lot of these people are thinking about it or are at film school. Do they teach you actually all the sort of tricks of the trade at film school? Do you sit in a classroom and they say, here's a wide shot, this is the best way to get to a close-up?
Yeah.
Do they do all that?
No. I guess, I mean, I went to Bournemouth, it's kind of 20 years ago or something now. So it was, and my experience there was really different to the NFTS. When I was at Bournemouth, I'm sure it's really different now, but when I went there, we all went out and we just shot films together and we worked on each other's films and you just kind of
So they gave you the equipment?
Yeah, they gave us the equipment and basically we had that experience of, learning together and trying stuff and, each one saying, oh, I tried this and it was great. And, and that kind of just hands-on experience, which is great for going out. And then, I started as a camera trainee on a couple of films and then started working as a clapper loader. But at the NFTS, it was really different because, yes, they did say, okay, so we're going to do like a kind of day for night class.
Right. Yes.
And we're going to do,
learn how to do that.
Yeah, so it was like tips and techniques and stuff like that. But I suppose the main thing they really taught you is to know the things you need to find out. Because the technology is changing all the time. We're never going to know everything.
Yeah.
But to understand, okay, so in order to do this, these are the things I need to know.
Yeah. These are the lights I might need to have.
Yeah, this is like my checklist in order to do this thing. But it's very focused on storytelling. And so that's the other thing is how to say, okay, how are we going to visually tell this story? Like, what's the essence of this scene in terms of the overall story and in terms of each individual kind of character arc within a scene? And so those things are things that teach you. And also I think, very importantly, because there were a few of us, you do a load of workshops together and stuff like that, and you have the same lights and the same actors and the same script, and you end up everybody does something different.
Yeah,
so it gives you a level of confidence of being like, okay, actually, I don't have to think, what's my style, who am I, something like that, because you're already like, okay,
I'm finding it.
It just occurs, which I think gives you a level of confidence, which is really useful.
Well, that's a good lead into our first clip. The first clip we have for you is something from the Queen's Green Planet, which we were just talking about. And I think what is amazing about all of these clips is how you almost don't notice the camera work. I mean, in fact, that's what's so brilliant about them. And it's a shame we don't have any really bad clips where you suddenly see a cut from this to that. It is seamless. Do you want to just tell us how you do this?
It was about a year's filming to get to this point, on and off with royalty, the Queen and the princes, and travelling around the Commonwealth a little bit. And we finally got the green light to do this 2 hours in Buckingham Palace Garden with David Attenborough and the Queen. And we turned up an hour beforehand, I think. And
so no rehearsal?
No rehearsal.
You were walking backwards most of the time?
I walked the course. I knew we'd be roughly walking this circuit, although it was always open to change. And had my camera standing by, and the Queen and Attenborough walked out, and off we went.
Straight off.
And occasionally I had to interrupt them and say, "Ma'am, would you mind pausing 1 second whilst I go here?" And she took direction very well. But it was one take, effectively. There's no retake, obviously. And the POV, the cutaway shots, I did probably just afterwards, straight away. So,
OK, well, let's have a look. We'll cue the clip and look for the smoothness of this.
The Queen's love of trees goes back to her early childhood. But the tradition of planting trees at Buckingham Palace goes back even further.
Now then, that a mulberry.
In the early 1600s, King James I planted mulberry trees here as food for silkworms. But there was a problem.
They chose the wrong variety, and so the silkworms didn't produce anything, which was a great disappointment for him, I believe. So I think he thought it was going to be rather good.
Yeah.
But turned out the wrong one.
Undeterred, the Queen, like her great-great-grandmother Victoria, is continuing the tradition of planting family trees in the garden. There's an oak for her son, Prince Charles, her daughter, Princess Anne, and 2 for her youngest sons, Princes Andrew and Edward.
Now, where are these children's trees? They do have plaques on them.
Shall I go and look?
Yes, do. I don't think he believes me.
Prince Andrew.
No. Done quite well. And there's another one there with a plaque.
Prince Andrew, 1969.
That one.
I think so, yes.
And you said,
No, don't say that.
you said that was Andrew. Can't both be.
Oh, that's Andrew. Oh dear. Edward. That's Edward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Andrew's older than Edward, so
Yes,
it
quite
looks,
so.
looks right.
They're looking, oh indeed, rather spectacularly so. Unexpectedly so.
You've done quite well, but
He's done it extremely well.
Right, before you do your questions, I just want to ask, did you talk to the director about the pacing of it? Because it just felt like you captured the sort of pace of the Queen somehow, without...
No, I mean, I know Jane, the director, and I work together a lot. So, and single camera shooting on the shoulder, you just have to, you have to just, yeah, be careful at how you move.
And were you listening to...
Of course, you have to listen the whole time. Of course.
So you're actually taking in what they're saying rather than just
Yeah.
thinking about the shot, you're carefully thinking...
I try and be invisible, really.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. You're not aware of the camera. It looks very simple, I must say. It looks
I
very
agree.
simple. Crumbs. It is, but it looks very simple. And it is very simple, really. It takes a long time to get there.
Does anybody have anything they want to ask about that clip while we're here? Any questions? So you all thought it looked too simple, didn't you? Okay, prize for you, question asker.
Yeah, awesome. Hello. The first two-part question. Number one, what is that feeling like to know, like, oh, fuck, that's the Queen, you know? Like, not that I'm anybody yet, but I've never filmed anybody of importance, but that's the
And if
Queen.
it goes wrong, you don't get to ask her to come back
You can't be
tomorrow.
like, oh, do you want to do it tomorrow, Les? Forgot the second part of the question. It's fine.
Well,
the Queen part first.
A lot of pressure.
Once filming the Queen is like filming anyone, to be honest. I mean, just don't fall over is the main thing. And I think just be respectful of them and listen and watch. And well, it's watch.
And on the technicalities, obviously you did that in one take, you followed them. I mean, there was masses of movement. I don't know if you all noticed that, but it's very easy just to stay in one place, but you managed to come round behind them. It was the Queen. It felt so flowing.
I think the point to make here actually is that most people would have used two cameras on that.
Yes.
Perhaps a wide and a close on the Queen, or two singles. Then the bandwagon takes over what you're doing slightly, I think. And the point about single camera is that you always, whenever you film anything, you always impact on it. You always have an impact, certainly in the factual world. You affect what you're filming because you're there with the camera.
Yeah. But you affect
and
it
the
less if
stuff,
it's just...
The more gear you have, the more cameras you have, the more you affect it, and the more whatever you're filming becomes a fiction, slightly.
Yeah.
So the point about single camera is you are as discreet as you can be, and you impact on what you're filming as little as possible. That is the point. That's the key.
But you had chosen what lens you were going to be on.
I was on a zoom lens. I tend to let the action lead the camera. So often I'll kick off being led, the camera being led by whatever happens, and then hope for a pause. And of course, if everything keeps moving, it's much easier. It's when things stop that it becomes tricky, because then you're aware of the camera.
Yes.
Well, I think it's being aware of the camera. If people are moving, and I can move, and I can go around and go in front and go behind carefully, but once they stop, of course, then the audience is much more aware of the camera. I think that's...
And I want you all to notice that lovely, there was the moving shot of walking along, and then the cutaway POV shot was moving at exactly the same pace. It was very beautifully
We had to do that
done.
straight away afterwards.
Yes, so you're still in the mood, the lighting is all the same, and you... Anyone else, anything on that clip? We've got loads to get through, so yes?
Hi, I guess what really jarred me about it was the kind of deliberate handheld style and how it was almost kind of created a sense of intimacy. Yeah. Was that a deliberate stylistic choice?
Absolutely right, yes.
Yeah, or was that just kind of logistical?
No, that's what I think single camera observational filming is. It is an intimacy. You are, reducing the barrier of that technology or equipment can create.
I totally agree. It felt like we were there as part of that conversation.
And by being handheld, I think it's important too.
You don't have the steady
the camera on my shoulder. That's what's important.
Okay, we'll go into the next clip. I'm not going to give this too much introduction. It's fabulous. It starts quite slowly, but stay with it. Cue clip.
I want to bypass the school completely and do a video. If we go to the soup kitchen tonight, I can have it in before Christmas and actually show people we have a problem.
No, it's the Christmas show tonight. And I'm doing a special song about Santa.
Miss Wright said you need something real. And this is real.
I promise I'll make it back for your song. And Gran will be there. She's really excited to see you, Lise.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Cool. Hey, let's see that asshole try and stop this one.
Oi, Annie Lennox.
Right, I'm going over there.
How Daniel Laser's Iron Man?
He doesn't have lasers. They're repulsors.
Well, Nick doesn't need help being any more repulsive. Plus, it's not like he could actually do anything.
Hey, did you guys hear what happened in science? Oh my god. Gemma Brown called Miss Hutchie a Nazi and got all upset she was sent outside because she thought Nazi meant the same as awesome.
No such thing as a Hollywood ending. No such thing as a Hollywood ending. No such thing as a Hollywood ending. No such thing as a Hollywood ending.
What was I thinking? This isn't Disney. I'm way off script and losing the plot. Things don't work out that way. I'm not McConaughey turning the charm on calling the shots. If this was a movie, maybe she would be willing to share my world. I'm starting to realize sometimes the nice guys don't always get the girl. 'Cause no one ever tells you when you're young. Love's not like the books, the films, or the songs. We've been living a life for far too long. We're tired of pretending. There's no such thing as a Hollywood ending. No such thing as a Hollywood ending. No such thing as a Hollywood.
Don't be mistaken, my heart's not breaking. Let them all talk, I don't give a shit. Kill, marry, shag, it's all such a drag. I'm more than a lost piece waiting to fit. I'm not a princess sat in a white, just hoping my chance will come. Then I'm a problem, don't wanna solve them, just wanna have some fun.
'Cause no one ever tells you when you're young. Love's not like the books, the films, or the songs. We've been living a life for far too long. And we're tired of pretending. There's no such thing as a Hollywood ending. I've got the one I want right next to me. I hope to God it works out perfectly.
Great.
Fabulous, Sarah. Okay, tell us what that was and how you did it.
Okay, so it's a zombie Christmas musical.
Of course.
Yeah. And we filmed it in Glasgow in January and February, which is kind of like less than 6 hours of daylight.
Right.
And it's quite bleak, basically. So this is... so it starts off and we wanted to create this very, Christmas, colourful, happy world even though we were filming somewhere which was quite grey. But anyway, so, and then all the colours kind of twist towards the end as this apocalypse unfolds, and it becomes extremely colourful, which you can't see there. But anyway, all the colours kind of twist, and it becomes super dark and really heightened and strange. Anyway, so this, for that location, basically, because we had this very limited amount of daylight, we kind of built tents around all of the windows so that we could put, and like net curtains and stuff like that, so we could put a lot of lighting in through the windows. And we had these Christmas festoons so that we could have the idea of Christmas in the back of every shot, basically. I think the line producer thought I was crazy when I was ordering like 800 bulbs, coloured bulbs, and it was just like, what's happening with all of these? And
did you shot plan so everything must have been planned?
Yeah,
so you had a full picture of every...
I mean, we didn't, it wasn't exactly storyboarded, but for this sequence, like, there's obviously a lot of moving parts. But actually, I don't think we ever saw all of those, like, every character there. Like, we saw the main cast rehearsing before the day, and then on the day was the only time when we had all of these essays and everybody there doing the song and dance. So I think they pretty much spent the morning, like, re-going over it and making sure that they'd all learnt it in other places, and it all came together.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we'd beforehand been like, okay, we shot the entire film 2 cameras, actually, just because there's something like that where you have so many kind of moving parts that you want to be able to
have those action cuts.
Yeah, you want to have action cuts, exactly, and also like there's a lot of, you know, group scenes and group sequences and stuff like that, and you can do like 2 close-ups at the same time, you know, which is also why we chose anamorphic, so you could, you know, you can get a really nice tight 2 shot, and where you can see somebody saying something and somebody reacting at the same time, which is really, you know, good for comedy. And so I suppose, so we watched the choreography with the main cast, and we kind of like filmed it on phones and stuff like that, and had like a really solid plan of like, okay, for this beat where they like jump off the table and like, you know, let's get a nice kind of wide shot. And I suppose as well, like for dancing sequences, it's nice to be able to come out wide, even though you want to see your characters singing. You want to be able to come wide and see like, okay, there's like a whole load of people slamming their fists on the table and jumping up and down.
Again, I just want to say that in that whole sequence, that never felt like there was a jolt. You never noticed the camera. Again, astonishing. Any questions from you guys on that clip? Yes. Oh.
Oh yeah. I guess I know that An Apocalypse was originally a short film. So I guess my question is, how much of the short did you use as inspiration for the feature?
I never actually saw the short film until after we'd shot the feature, which is maybe bizarre, but I didn't see it. I mean, I suppose the director must have watched it, but I guess, like how I kind of got involved was I was sent the script and I was sent the songs, and I knew, and I think it was much later actually that it was mentioned that there had been the short film beforehand. But I just chatted with the director, and I was like super excited about the project, and so I was like, okay, here's like a million visual references of like, it could be like this, it could be like that, and he's also really crazy about colours, and so between the two of us, we kind of went slightly wild.
And had you worked with that director before?
No, so we had.
So did you pitch for the job?
Yeah, exactly. So we had like a phone interview just where we talked through the things that we found really exciting about it, and talked about references and things like that. And then I sent him probably 200 images of like, okay, this sequence, this scene, like I like all of these kind of things. And he talked about films he liked and stuff like that. And then I had a second telephone interview with him and one of the producers. And then, that was...
It's a fantastic clip. It's sort of thrilling. Any other questions on that clip? Yes? I like the way you're sitting right in the middle just to make sure it's... to get the microphone to you as hard as possible.
What was the biggest challenge with doing the musical number? Like in that sort of, it looked like a smallish space. I don't know, but what was the biggest challenge there?
I think time is always the biggest challenge. That number, I think we did, it was like the second day of shooting that we shot this, and actually it was a brilliant thing to do then, because then like the entire crew was like, okay, this is what we're doing, you know, because actually when you sell it as an idea, you're like, okay, it's a zombie Christmas musical. People are a bit like, okay, sure. But actually, you know, it's all a heightened world, and I guess our characters are kind of playing it, you know, they're playing it like it's the real world, whether they're singing or they're killing zombies or the world is all being destroyed around them, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Did I answer that?
I did. How many times through did you run it? I mean, how many passes did you take to get that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess actually that's, you know, a good point, because that totally goes into the time thing again, because the song is probably 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. And so in terms of us working out how we were going to manage the coverage of that within the time, it's like, you know, that number of cast to reset them all. Yeah. And, you know, it's like an enormous kind of undertaking. And I suppose as well, yeah, just there's like 14 musical numbers in the film. And we wanted each of them to have like a really different feeling, and also to be kind of that each one, ideally they're moving the characters along. It's not just like, oh, okay, cool, musical interlude, it's been 5 minutes, we better have another one. They are actually like, you know, they're driving the characters and moving things along, and we wanted that to happen visually. So, you know, if you haven't seen it, I think it's a really fun film to watch, and they're all different, all of the songs.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, we're going to move on to our next clip. This is from the Juggernaut format, Who Do You Think You Are?, which I'm sure many of you have seen. It's obviously the story of somebody's life history, and we were just saying earlier it's sort of part drama, but it's also actuality. Do you want to tell us what to look out for in this?
I think in its 16th or 17th series on BBC.
And you've done quite a lot.
I have shot, I think, about 35.
Yeah, wow. That's fantastic.
Most of them are good. And what I like about them is that it's factual entertainment, or specialist factual, I'm not quite sure what the BBC called it, but it's a combination of documentary and drama. So it's effectively a 1 hour scripted drama, because it is scripted really, but dressed up as a documentary. So I give it all the sort of
the production value of a
so handheld mainly and observed, and the camera is being led all the time. So
yes, so there is a lot of movement in it. I think we can feel that there's a lot of journey.
Filming, making it into a physical journey as well. I always try and do that. So filming in cars and trains, I think just helps that emotional journey as well.
Okay, physical journey, emotional journey. Let's see. This is Rob Rinder. Is that his?
Judge Rinder, I think.
Yeah, Judge Rinder. Can we cue the clip, please?
It's incredibly poignant, and it feels really sad because my grandfather's not here anymore. But I was, you know, much, much younger and definitely not ready, I think, to listen or hear. So, although it feels strange, I definitely feel sort of more ready, I think.
Robert is returning to the street in Piotrków that his grandfather showed him 20 years ago. He is trying to find the apartment block where Morris grew up.
It feels completely like a ghost town. This is it. Wow, it's not how I remember it.
He's meeting historian Netanel Yechieli.
Hello, Robert.
Hi, Netanel.
So excited to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
So
Thank
excited.
you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Stara Warszawska 6.
Wow. When I came back before, this was a lived-in building.
Okay.
20 years ago.
Yeah. Do you know where your family lived here?
Unless I'm really mistaken, it was on the first floor.
Yeah, it was 4 floors. This is number 22.
Yeah.
This is where your grandfather was born and lived. The owner was my family.
You serious?
Yeah. All these apartments belong to my family.
So my family rented from your family?
Yeah, that's the story.
That's an amazing thing. That's an extraordinary thing. Look how these are original.
Yeah, it's all original from before the war. So your grandfather and my grandfather were very good friends.
They know each other?
Yeah, of course, they were very good friends. So this is the list of all the children in the house. So let's see if you can find your grandfather.
Oh, look, there we are, Melanitsky.
Okay.
Melanitsky, I can't read it.
Maybe it will be easier for you to read here. We translated that to English. Look at this.
So, Moshe's born 11th of February. 1923.
Do you know his accurate date?
No, he never said. In fact, it would be, as we're sitting here now, last week, or thereabouts. Hang on.
What's the date today?
Did you know it's the 11th of February today?
No.
So today is his birthday? Yeah. Wow.
So he was born there in flat number 22, and we are sitting here at the same date. So today is like the 95th birthday of your grandfather.
Wow. I have to say there was a bit of, I know you've just done the sound masterclass, and there was a nice sound in that with the distant bells, the dog barking, incredibly atmospheric and...
These places are, my God.
And just, again, beautifully put together. I love the way you frame, I think your framing just is perfect. So just tell us how, there are big close-ups in these programmes. Is it a format where there's a sort of Bible of how you're going to do it, or...?
Yeah, I guess there's a way I like to film, certainly, and I think that I like to be quite close in the face, because that's really what's interesting, I think, being in someone's face, in a close shot.
And how, so when you're filming those close-ups, how physically far away are you, in fact? So...
8 feet.
Right, okay.
2 meters, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know Rob and knew him, got to know him well, so those barriers are broken down. But,
yeah.
And we're all invested in the story. We're all invested. And that moment that we saw there, obviously, no one knew it was going to happen. No one had made the connection, I think, that was his grandfather's 95th birthday or whatever.
Yeah, it's fantastic when there are those moments.
I think you have the format, and that in fact was 2 cameras. I think one of the rare occasions I get 2 cameras, although I operated it as well. So it's a locked off on the tripod of the guy he
was talking to.
I was close on Rob, but it was that's the format, I think. But you're always open for anything to unravel.
And I do think, I love the way it's very theatrical. So when you have that shot, the 2 of them are sitting in the window, and they're just lit by the light coming in through the window.
I think what I do particularly is that I make what is there, what's available,
work
whatever it is. However, and often it is a windowless, fluorescent lit hospital waiting room. But you have to make that work.
Yeah.
And make that part of the story, the key,
But that, because you had the arches with them sort of silhouetted in the, and
those
cutting to the white shot. Lovely.
Dramatic. They're, sort of, they're like film sets, pretty much.
Yes, it felt like a film set with something real unfolding in it.
And it's an emotional story, so that always helps. A good script, good location.
And how often do you get them to do something again? So,
I think occasionally what I would often do is get an answer again. I always try and get a reaction from Rob in this case. First time, so I always cover any conversation.
A real reaction.
Genuinely, and that was a moment we saw that we wouldn't have got again. We would have done, but it wouldn't be the same. And I'll often get a second answer or from the other character, just so either a more succinct version or just to get it again. But that's the thing is that you have the opportunity to get a second take, which is hugely helpful. So those POV shots, obviously, there's time to do those.
I just think I'd be on that train going, oh, now the background's even better, let's do another take. Oh, now maybe, and I'd just overshoot like mad. You obviously are you find the perfect...
There are probably a few more shots they could have used, but I think, obviously, a film about the Holocaust, where it ends up. A railway in Europe.
Yeah, so
Instantly,
atmospheric.
it's loaded images straight away. So, you haven't got to try very hard. It's there. It's all there. You have to see it.
Any questions from you guys? Do you? I know this is a terrible thing to ask, but does any of you actually watch TV, scheduled TV, or do you only ever watch stuff on the internet as clips? Anyone watch TV? I mean, I have to say that some of the reason that the big formats survive, is because they're so beautifully made, produced and made, I think. So I would really advise you to watch them. Yes.
Okay, so how would you say it's like to go around filming with like non-fiction and like capture like emotional moments without almost making it awkward for like the cast or contributors? It's like how to kind of not make it awkward for them.
Good question. I go back to what I said before. Really, I think you will always affect what you're filming to a lesser or greater degree because you're there with the camera. It's how you manage that, how you minimise that, really. And that really is just by being discreet and low-key and,
allowing the action.
Allowing it to unfold, really, and responding to that, and stepping back if it's all too much. But genuinely, people forget you're there, actually. I mean, almost all the time, people forget you're there.
Yeah.
Within minutes of filming,
Especially if
incredibly.
you've set them up with somebody to meet who is telling them something that they're genuinely...
Yeah, I mean, they're invested in the story, it's in their head, and you respect that. And I don't know, through experience, you learn where to be or where not to be, crucially. And I think that's, again, a single camera thing. The more gear you have in those situations, the more you impact on it. And I think the less good result you get, ultimately.
Presumably, over the course of your career, camera's ability to deal with low light has changed massively. Has that changed?
Yes, I shoot, in fact, none of my clips have lights I do light all the time, obviously, but because camera sensors are so quick, so fast now, in those situations, I also wouldn't use lights because it would make it into something that it isn't,
Yes.
I would put a light up in that scene where in the stairwell, if we hadn't had that natural daylight,
sure,
I'd have done something. But actually, that was what's on offer. Let's make that work, and it did work.
I mean, you are really all at an incredibly privileged moment in terms of cameras because it really was very, very difficult to film anything without extra lighting. But,
yes.
And now, so it was very difficult to get any actuality. Because you went into someone's kitchen and you said, oh, before you even tell me about your, sick child, I need to put 3 lights up in your kitchen. It was, you didn't get those moments where people were able to just tell you how they felt when you arrived. Okay, we're now going to go to one of Sarah's clips, which is a Viking princess fighting in a forest. Is there anything you want to point out so that these guys can look for things before we see the clip?
No, I think let's watch it.
The lighting is beautiful, so enjoy that. Let's cue the clip, please.
Seems you have learned all I have to teach you, Princess.
How I wish that one day I will see real battle, but I never will.
No wish can come true that can't be kept secret.
And why do you keep our training a secret?
If I told you, what hope would my wish have of coming true?
I thank you for the favor.
I may one day ask a favor of you in return.
That there are so many things, seeing that for the second time, that I didn't even notice the first time around. I think I'm going to watch that several times over. There's a top shot camera looking down. And it all runs so smoothly that there are a few there are tricks, but they're done so seamlessly that you don't notice. Go on, tell us, how did you do all that?
Okay, so this is kind of like the director would say it's like a fairy tale. It's like a Viking fairy tale, you know. It's essentially the story of the Lion King, but with a princess, is the story of this film. And so basically, before we did it, he was like, okay, you know, our lead needs to look like a princess the entire time. Like, you know, so even though she's in these sword fights and all this stuff is happening, she still needs to look kind of, you know, just like absolutely perfect. Yeah, so I guess that was, you know, one of the things that we took into account in finding this location. Like, a lot of this film is set in various different types of woods, and this is like the very first sword fight, very first scene, really. There's like a kind of
Where is it, just
prequel.
so we all know, if we need a beautiful wood?
It was in Ireland, in Ballymoney, where actually like the light changes like an insane amount during the day. Like you always have to be ready that it'll be backlit, even though it's cloudy for most of the day. But at some point it will just come out for half an hour, and you'll be.
And so that was the sun that made the trees all.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, what we did was we found this very dark forest for this first sequence, which, you know, needs to have this really spooky, scary, you know, vibe. If you don't know what's going on, you actually are supposed to feel like she's in danger. And then we added the layer of smoke, you know, to really give
that smoke.
The trees some depth, and it not just be like, okay, there's a person in just pine forest, you know, that just goes to total darkness. And then we had, because I guess it's that thing of like, you know, you're talking about the practicalities of, you know, also as well, even though there's all kind of things you could do, but in this sequence where you're kind of like, for a lot of those kind of action sequence, you need to be able to move around really and be like, okay, so we're going to do this and then that and then the other. And there's so many shots in that sequence, you have to be able to move fast. So it was basically a case of like, okay, so we're just going to light them. Like, we're just going to pop them out from the background. So we've got these quantum lights, which are like 4x4 LED lights, like through a frame. And so literally then just for each one of those things, you just be like, cool, we move our two lights, which are going to like a 5K Jenny, you know. And I guess that decision was made because we were like, okay, like
it's got to be
it has to be practical, it has to be efficient to get this much kind of coverage. Like, the action director was like, so ideally we're not going to be lighting any of this, and I was like, no, we're absolutely lighting it. But
she's got to look like a princess.
Yeah, exactly. She, you know, that's the thing, because otherwise it would just be, you know, they would be just gloomy.
And things like, you know, the big, I mean, I love the way you went from the big wides to the tight close-ups to, you know, sometimes speeded up, occasionally slowed down. Again, that was storyboarded, or did you?
Yeah, so this whole fight was, it was kind of, you know, like it was shot before we made it. So basically there was an action director and stunt doubles, and they, you know, they go off and they spend time like, be like, you know, and send me and the director some visuals of the fights. And again, there's a lot of fights in this, and we wanted the fights also to be that they develop and change, you know, with the characters as the story goes on. So it shouldn't just be like, oh, cool, there's another fight, and it's very similar to all the rest of the fights. So they would kind of come back with like, you know, there's obviously in the script, it's like the fight is written, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You're not just like, these two fight, it's like, this happens, then this happens, and she hits him with the log, and then, you know, blah, 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 is in the script. And then we get a cut kind of storyboard.
Yes.
On
tape,
using
but I
stunts.
mean, yeah,
It's
so
actually, you know,
using-
so it's like a real visual thing.
Yes.
And yeah, and then we'll kind of like shot list that and we'll be like, okay, like actually we don't like this shot, or we, you know, let's do this in a slightly different way, and you know. So that's, but it was very, it was how
And the top
this
shot
fight
is
was
done with the camera hanging on a
scaffold.
Right.
Above them. Yeah, so I guess actually that's
and you're
a good
changing
point of-
lenses for the close-up of the
Yeah,
sword
exactly. You know,
hitting
so we
the-
want, you know, that thing of kind of being able to expand and shrink time
Yes.
is really important for shooting that kind of an action sequence. You know,
Yes, yeah.
like changing the shutter angle, and then some of those moves you would shoot at like 6 frames per second, so that it seems like they're moving super fast, and then you know putting the slow-mo in so that you don't just feel like no connection with the fight, if that makes any sense.
Well,
Like,
I
you always
love that
want to care about the
idea
character.
of speeding up and slowing down time in a fight, because actually that is
Exactly.
exactly what that you've encapsulated. Has anybody here shot a fight sequence? Anybody done fights? Oh, well, I'm sure at some point in your long careers you'll do a fight sequence, and you can go back and have a look at that one. I think it's brilliantly done. Has anyone got any questions about that sort of action? Yes?
All right, so so obviously sword fights have been done like quite a lot in film, and some of the kind of elements of that fight are quite reminiscent of other sword fights. So would you say that it's hard to kind of make a sword fight original, and what would you recommend doing to make it original?
I mean, I guess so. It's so dependent as well. Like, you know, for that film, because we had an action director, like a lot of, you know, those kind of discussions of like exactly what is going to happen in terms of the motion of the fight, like, is mostly between the director and the action director. So
you didn't have to worry about that.
No, I would more be like, okay, you know, actually, can we change this angle? Is there a nicer way of seeing this movement? Or, you know, as we're shooting it, can we have moments that last longer? You know, like this fight is very different. There's another fight that we shot later in pickups in the middle of the film with a different stunt team, a different action director, and it's entirely different just because that action director was like, okay, cool, no, we're gonna get our lead character, we're gonna teach them the fight. Like a lot of this is stunt doubles, which is a very different way of working, because it means that you'll be on an angle and then at some point that angle falls apart because you can see that it's not the real person, and then obviously there's like using action props and stuff, you know, it becomes very, I guess when you watch it, you want it to be like a super fast and exciting fight, and sometimes they're not that way to shoot. Like the one we did later in pickups really was, and we shot it in, I'm trying to think how, like probably 2.5 hours, and it's probably like similar length to this, and it's much more pacey and energetic and dynamic because that fight was all just handheld, and it was like, okay, they rehearsed the fight. I went and shot the fight while they were rehearsing it on like my phone or something, and chatted with the director, and we were like, okay, cool, this is a great angle for this moment, this is really cool for this, and you know, and then we just did a couple of hero close-ups in that, and it's a totally different way of doing it, but it's also, I don't know. So yeah, I guess there's just I guess my point is there's so many different ways of shooting
I
the
think
fight.
that for me, what's original about that, what's clever about it, is that it is glamorous.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to be her.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing, that when you are shooting a sequence, sometimes you want it to be gritty and horrible, but to do it where it looks stylish and sort of lit, it did look, it looked...
Yeah, which I guess actually is, you know, it's a very good point, that the one in the middle of the film is at a completely different point in the story, you know, whereas at this point
she's training,
it's our
in fact,
opening sequence,
yes.
she's training,
and we discover
we want
she's
to
training
be like,
at the end.
oh, she's a princess, you know. All right for some.
Anybody else over there?
You had that one really, like the fight is happening, it's very well choreographed, but you do have that moment of like, it was really interesting, diverse shots where there's just that tension and that pause. And even the one like the low angle, what was your thought process behind developing that and creating tension within the actual shots themselves?
Yeah, so I guess exactly, you know, I suppose there's that thing, isn't there, of, you know, I think it's definitely really interesting to as we say, expand time, and those kind of low angles, like it's totally, it's really setting up that character to be like this scary person. So I guess it's kind of, and the whole thing of the swords coming from the side of the camera and the POV and stuff like that. I guess, just it's actually thinking about all of those action beats as opposed to being like, okay, like they do it and we film it. Like this style of filming of a fight is to be like, how do we extend these moments and feel like you're, as close to that fight as possible, because I feel like that it's really possible to become disassociated from watching fight stuff, because you're just like, oh cool, now they fight again, and you don't feel any of the hits and you don't feel any of the drama or jeopardy. And I guess they were trying to, we're trying to make drama and jeopardy and also style,
and make us curious about the story, because who is this?
Sorry,
and make us curious about the story, which I definitely was. Okay, let's take a quick question there.
As the camera person, how much creative influence do you have on the day of filming? Do you just do what you're told, or do you work with the director? Do you know?
I mean, I suppose, I would say that, it's kind of that thing. So you get like a script or a treatment or, like whatever it is, you were told about a project. And from that point, I think my initial thing is to be like, what does, for the director, how do they see this project? What's happening for them? And obviously, like, I'll come to it with my own ideas and be like, cool, how can we do this and that and the other? But essentially, there's one person, or unless there's two directors, but essentially there's somebody who is running the show. And my plan is always to be that whatever I'm doing is to enhance and to really get on board with their project. Because the thing is, if you're not doing something together, you will always be in a battle. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not against the director at all in any way. My plan is to understand their vision as much as possible. So before we get anywhere near the set, we would spend quite a lot of time together talking through ideas of the project as a whole and of each individual scene. And we will have recce'd all of the, for drama stuff, we'll have recce'd all of the locations together and be like, okay, cool. Like, ideally, we'll go there with a really solid plan of like, they're going to stand here, and this is where the action's going to happen, and we'll have a shot list, and maybe we'll arrive there and say, okay, actually we've just seen them do something way more exciting, and we're going to totally change it up. But to have that really solid plan and to understand, most importantly, for the director, how do they see the arc of this character? Because once you understand that, it means that we can change stuff on the day, and we're still telling the story, and everything we're doing is in service of the script and in service of the director's vision, which I think is.
Would you say the same about working
Absolutely.
with your relationship with the director?
That's a key thing, that relationship with the director. It's a key thing in what you do, I'm sure, and that's what I do.
Although
trust and collaboration.
Yeah, and I think everyone knows that.
And interpretation.
If the director goes out and only gets what they asked for from the camera person, they haven't got a show. That was what I was told early on. You basically want your camera person to be thinking of more than you think of.
Well, then you're an operator.
If you're directing.
You're more than that. You're more than that. So.
You're contributing, which brings us on to your next clip, which really demonstrates how, in a situation where nobody can stop and start the action, and the camera person is really having to direct as it goes along and capture the moments. Do you want to introduce this?
Yes, it's an old clip, in fact, but I think it still stands up because it really shows how you can work in a tricky environment. In this case, an operating theatre, and not really know roughly know what's going on, but not knowing from moment to moment what will unfold, and telling a story like a jigsaw puzzle, really, with details and reactions and
building. I think building a story here.
Yeah, so it's it's an old clip.
Old clip with a great
quite
clip.
Gruesome.
Okay, cue the clip.
The electrodes are now connected to a test stimulator.
Now we're going to stimulate with little bit current here. You might feel something and you might feel nothing. Whatever you feel, you tell us.
Okay.
It can be...
Including zero.
It can be tingling, it can be whatever you feel.
Right.
Sweating, dizzy, happy, whatever.
Dr. Patricia Limousin monitors the effect the stimulation is having on Stuart's movement.
Feeling okay?
Yes.
No special sensation or anything?
Tingling in my foot.
Which foot?
Left.
Okay.
Very good.
Tingling in the right.
The twitching in Stuart's foot means the electrodes are in the right part of his brain.
Try as much as you can. Can you try and open big your fingers
Go down.
again?
Okay.
The two fingers.
One to start.
And all big?
Stuart can now move more easily.
You can, as fast as you can.
It's very good.
Marwan needs to make sure that the electrodes have not damaged other parts of the brain that control speech and concentration.
But okay, can you say after me? This is the night train crossing the border, bringing the checks and the postal order.
This is the night train crossing the border, bringing the checks and the postal order.
Letters for the rich and letter for the poor.
Letters for the rich, letters for the poor.
Okay. Look up. What's the color of my hat?
Looks almost red from here.
It's red. And what's the color of the white horse of Napoleon?
I hope it's white.
Okay, good.
The electrodes are now fixed in place. They won't work until they're connected to a small stimulator. This will be implanted in Stuart's chest in a few days' time.
Thank you, and your team.
Thank you, you did very well.
Here he is. Bit of a bump.
Well done, well done.
All right.
Yes, yes, and you will be fine. Sara, you're all right, you too? See you later.
Once Stuart has recovered, he'll be taken back to the ward.
I love that clip as well. I mean, I don't know, it's just the family as you come out and the way that, you know, we've been so intimate with him and then you realise that the family are there waiting and the lovely shot where he's wheeled away and then it reveals the daughters and the...
It's very moving, yeah.
It's very, I don't quite know what it is, I suppose... Seeing someone in such a vulnerable condition and then seeing the people who care about them so
Yes,
much.
they were a lovely family.
And you obviously had got to know them so that they were very...
And it was a long procedure. I mean, that was a long time ago. It's now a much quicker procedure, and you haven't got to be conscious. But he was conscious throughout that, which is pretty traumatic.
Yeah, extraordinary.
He's
I mean,
a
it's quite nice.
brave man.
It's nice that you don't have to worry about this. You've got non-sync with the masks on in an operating theatre.
Although I think they were all synced shots,
I thought that.
yeah.
I did look very carefully, and I thought it did look synced. But I mean, when you're filming actuality, I mean, you may have done this more often yourselves, but the real problem is you get into the edit, and if you've got a lot shot on the person who's speaking, it's very difficult to cut because there's nothing to cut to. So do you always try and shoot the person who's not speaking?
Yes, I think playing a scene on reactions is actually often more powerful, actually, in what I do. And also with one camera, you're always going to miss a lot. I mean, you try and minimise that, but you do miss stuff because it's one camera. And with that in mind, I always try and listen. If I'm listening, I think, oh, damn, I missed that. So how can you...
But luckily, we never know
How
what
can the editor cover that?
Yes,
What do they need
Yes,
to
to
make
help
that
them.
moment work? So it'll be, you know, an eye line change or something on a reaction or detail.
Yeah.
Just so I'm always thinking, always listening, and trying to get the coverage and trying to get the sync. But if I've missed something, I'm thinking how will the editor cut around that? What do they need to cut around that?
We back in my day, it was always the cats were incredibly useful because a cat would always just go like that and somehow give you the sense that the cat was listening to the conversation.
Or holding hands.
Or yes, I mean, again, you have to try and make it look seamless, which you do. And I also felt really strongly in that scene that the personalities of the two principal characters, so the surgeon and the man, what's his name?
Marwin. The gat-chewing Yemeni brain surgeon.
Yes, those two, Stuart and they were brilliantly drawn in such a simple way.
Strong characters in a great location.
Yeah.
In a very
dramatic
scene, you know, it's just there. So you have to capture it somehow.
Yeah. Any questions on that clip? Has anyone been in a brain operation theatre?
Yeah, I haven't been in a brain operation, but watching your single camera work, it's like even though you're capturing a performance or like a sort of the actuality of something, it's like watching a performance in itself is very graceful, and it must require like a bit of physical confidence, body confidence.
It does.
Do you do anything outside of your work that like sort of, or is that just the nature of you as a person that sort of?
I don't know. I mean, I've always done this. So I cycle. But apart from that,
cycle,
yeah. But you do develop a strong core, I think.
Do you ever film anything that you're not actually very interested in, or are you able to be interested in everything?
Very, very rarely. I mean, I have to be interested, and I'm lucky enough to almost always be offered something that's interesting, or you make it interesting.
And I just think often it's about finding beauty in. You manage to make things look beautiful, even when often they're quite.
Thank you. I think it's fine. I mean, the key thing. One of the key things is trying to find the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Yes.
You know, tell the big story in the small story.
Yes. And actually, I think I read somewhere in the notes from one of you, I'm not quite sure which it was, that often you're looking for the shot that the eye might look at. So you're trying to, if someone else were there in the room, the things that they might pick up and...
Well, I think, yes, comparing the last clip we saw with this, with brain operation, what I was doing and what I do is very much, I put the camera where, you know, at eye level. That's because that's how we see the world.
Sure.
And by doing that, instantly it becomes less visible, less noticeable, which is the opposite of what you were doing in the fight sequence and the understanding.
Yeah.
You know, so they are completely contrasted.
Yes.
Ways of filming.
But if done right, you don't notice the camera in either.
Well, I said I want to be invisible. I don't want to. You know, I don't want the audience to see the camera. I mean, obviously, they know it's there, but.
Well, I mean, for me, there's been a whole massive, interesting move in the modern world for jump cuts. All those YouTubers, you know, all the way through my career, we were carefully trying to paper over any cuts so you never noticed going from one bit of sync to the next. And I quite like the bold new fashion of, you know, we don't care about cutaways. We're just going to jump from me in my bedroom telling you I'm annoyed about this to, oh, my sister's just arrived in and we're going to do this. And there is a real energy to that. But I also think the kind of beauty of documentary filmmaking, you know, or obviously scripted, still it just carries you away when it's done right.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, we haven't got very much time. We've got a great clip to end you on, and this is, I think we were talking about capturing the story and the mood, and this is it makes you instantly curious about what's going on, and it's very clever. I'm going to cue it, and then you can explain it to us afterwards. So let's have the last clip. So more lovely forest, and I'm kind of desperate to know what's going to happen between those two.
Yeah, so basically, so the story is set in midsummer in Finland, and on midsummer it's like a night of kind of magic, you know, hence this idea of like the changing time and her walking into this magical space. And basically, so she's never had a boyfriend and she has a crush on that guy and she's just asked him to dance and he was like, no, I'm not dancing with you. And she kind of wanders off into the forest and kind of gets caught up in the magic. And she, so she's doing a spell, which is that if you take off your clothes and you roll around in the hay at midnight on midsummer, the first man you see is going to be the man of your dreams, and she gets up and he's the man, you know. So, yeah.
Beautifully shot. I think that one of the things that I would really say to all of you is that it's beautiful to shoot through things. What I think you often see with people when they're, you know, using phones is you just have a mid shot and it's just that and it follows it around. But in this clip, especially, you're shooting through, you know, you've got those little bits of the grass stuff floating around, or you're through trees. It's incredibly atmospheric, and it's just makes the shot so much more layered and interesting than a mid shot which follows the action absolutely straight.
Yeah.
I'm also really interested in the, you know, the folk dancing around on the beach. Somehow the way you shot that made them feel like they were retreating into a sort of sub-reality, and you were then completely immersed with her. Very cleverly done. Was that all carefully planned?
Yeah, so it was, exactly. You know, so I suppose, yeah, exactly. It's one of those things of a lot of time talking with the director to be like, okay, how can we
capture the,
you know, how we, because I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Is you get a script and actually you could do it in any way.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
Nothing much happens in that scene, but it's so packed with visual.
Exactly, but it's really, like, I think it's a really good example of the visuals working really well with the edit and the sound.
And that the sound is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
You know, that thing of the sound that grows and is this strange beat, and then the sound of the, you know, the magic of the forest type of thing, and then this stillness and the cricket close up, you know, like that mixture of those things, it really does put you into like a really different space, you know.
Yes.
And you know, that's definitely, like, I think very clever directing. You know,
very beautiful camera. I'm going to throw it out to the floor. I'm very aware that we're pretty much at the end of our session. I'm hoping that you'll just stay and that we can have a few questions. Yes.
What's your personal preference of camera, and what advice would you give us as a camera to have, and the financial advice as well?
Oh, good question.
On buying camera.
I think, you know, pretty much you can really work with any camera. And, you know, and ideally as a camera person, I think it's good if you, you know, if you can work with a lot of different ones, because actually sometimes the project is like, okay, we have to shoot on this, you know, and you get stuck with what, you know, for whatever reason, for financial reasons or because of what the delivery has to be. But basically, yeah, I guess I work a lot with the Lexas just because I really like them. You know, any of them, any of the Lexa family, yeah.
And do you have a lot of extra bells and whistles? Do you have steady cam, dollies?
It's so dependent on the project. I guess that's, that's what I was saying in terms of there's so many tools that we could do, so I guess that's the thing of the balance of kind of, practicality, budget and, the dream of how will we do this? And I guess those are the things that when you spend time with the director, you kind of like, okay, like this is more important for this story, but we're going to let go of some other things that we thought would be helpful, but actually, in this instance, those
You've
other
got
things
to
are more useful.
Focus on. Yes, wait, that is. Oh,
sorry, last
missed
one.
a question.
It's a really tiny thing, but the shot of the cricket, was that already
Yeah.
planned and like you brought a box of crickets, or did you just find one on the day of the shoot?
No, we brought some crickets with us.
That's it.
No crickets were harmed in the making.
No
of
crickets were
that.
harmed, exactly.
Yep.
My question is about the sound. So obviously it's beautifully shot. Just complimenting you a little bit. But like the sound on that, as she moves away and it becomes more quiet, how much of the planning beforehand, how much of that incorporated the sound and how much of it was done afterwards? And then also like with the crickets and the Foley and the grass sound, how much of that was planned and then done, and then how much of that was added in at the end?
I think the director knew that was the, that was the space, the world that he was trying to create. He's also an editor, so he cut it himself. So I think actually, I've worked quite a few times with directors that are also editors, and it is actually brilliant because they
know.
So often have such a clear thing of being like, no, we don't need to do that again because I'm never going to be on this shot. I'm going to be on that, which can just save you so much time. So I think that that he had a really good idea already of, that this is the world that he was trying to create. Like, the slow-mo stuff of there's like a shot where it's like through a tree log. And it's, it does a little kind of tracking as she walks through and it's super slow motion. And I guess like that is a totally planned shot of being like, okay, how can we send her into this other world of space? Like, the time of things on the rock in comparison to the time in the forest. Like it's all, I think it was planned, basically.
Anyone else? Yeah?
Just again regarding that insert, the close-up of the cricket. How would you go about structuring like your shooting schedule around inserts? Is this something that you'd leave until the end of the kind of shooting day, or would you just kind of implement them throughout?
I think it depends on what they are and kind of how important they are. I mean, because that's the thing is that actually sometimes, the shot of the cricket is a really important shot. But then on the other hand, you also need to bear in mind that, you've got actors and sometimes there'll be, really big actors and you kind of like that, that's, I guess, the key thing, isn't it? But I think it's just always knowing, these kind of extra things, sometimes they tell so much about the atmosphere and, so I think it's just really important to just make sure that they remain in the schedule. And there are definitely things that you sometimes have to fight for. And then in the Apocalypse, there's a sequence after there's like this really sad death and there's this big slow motion sequence that we've got in like a whole load of special lights and, really well planned out this sequence. And on the day we were a bit behind and the first AD was like, okay, so we're just going to shoot them running out the door. And me and the director were like, whoa, absolutely not. That's not going to happen because this, this is like one of the most important emotional scenes in the entire film, and I think that's the thing is that sometimes you absolutely have to fight those battles, even but I think it's knowing which ones are the important ones, and sometimes you have to let some other things go.
I think that there's all this backlight, it's very tricky backlighting stuff, but you both seem to manage it so effortlessly. Is it just sort of knowing that there's enough light on the face, but you get that you're getting the light coming through the hair and the? Is it just instinctive?
Well, you learn that. I mean, backlit, soft focus foreground is it gets you halfway there straight away.
Right, well, okay, every one of you needs to learn that or find someone who can do it for you because I think it looks, really good. And I always think, what other things where you think post-production, a lot of stuff is helped in post-production. So, obviously brilliant editing can get you out of holes. And what for you, what is it that the camera work is absolutely crucial for?
Composition.
Right, yeah.
Composition and getting the moment. I mean, we're both there to get the moment, whether it's a scripted
And to
moment.
put it into and frame it in a way which is like a piece of art.
So composition, I think, is key, although it's much more obvious in what you do, and rightly so.
I think in a factual program, composition is one of the, and you don't get any chance to practice it, but so it has to be done on the hoof.
I think I look at photojournalism and street photography a lot.
Yes.
Obviously, Tony Rojo's, Alex Webb is very interesting, I think, his work. And that's sort of shorthand for what I do.
Yes, for getting the composition. And have you changed? I mean, have you become, it become more modern? Are there things which you notice now, or things you do now which...
You always change, always evolve, I think. But I think looking at that, looking at photojournalism and seeing how a moment is captured when the composition is just perfect, the next second it would have gone.
Yes. It tells you.
I try
you can learn from.
Learn about.
Anything you learn from?
Sorry?
Anything that you learn, anything that you watched and learned from. You know, back in my day, music videos were the real thing. They just came through as I moved into TV, and they were always astonishingly forward-looking. And is there anything you watch or anything that you would advise these guys to look at?
I watch things all the time. I go running a lot and just look at the world, which, you know, and take lots of photos while I'm doing it, which also means I catch my breath. And then, like art galleries, photography, you know, like when I get a script, then I kind of, like once it's like, okay, that's happening, then I'll spend like quite a few days just like watching a whole load of films and just kind of thinking about like, okay, what is it about this that I really like, so that I then can send a load of references to the director that we can like go, okay, this is right, this is like I mean, do you work with references sometimes for...
Sure.
Yeah.
Often it's just a sentence about something, you know, a film or... But I do that all the time actually with directors. Just to give us an idea of pacing. And,
okay, so I think that sounds like...
right in the right same place, really, yeah.
So the advice is, I suppose, to just keep looking at the world, keep looking
build a library, a mental library of visual
images.
reference.
Yes.
And life experience. That's it, I think.
Well, I'm in time-honoured fashion, I'm going to end on a quote. Often I pretend to a cameraman to know less than I do. That way I get better results. That's an actress, and I think that's probably always a good bit of advice. Throw yourself on the mercy and brilliance of your cameraman, because they will take care of you and ensure that anything you produce is fantastic. I have to say that it's been really a massive pleasure to look at these terrific clips and to hear your thoughts on your craft. I think we all want to thank you very, very much indeed, Sarah.